Hey, Leilani with the Magical Solution here. So, I wanted to answer a few questions regarding mediumship and the various ways in which we, as espiritistas, spiritists, spiritualists, the many ways in which we pass spirits. Pass spirits is what we call it, okay? Passing spirits can happen in a lot of different ways, right? The first way that people love to talk about is in the way of mounting, right? So mounting is sort of like full body possession. Another nickname for being a mount is being a horse, because the analogy is that the spirit is riding you, it's riding your body. The second way, and I've done a video on this before, the other way in which we can pass spirits is by being a mediator. And mediators are basically like trance meditation type channelers, right? So these are people that do allow the spirit to work through them, but remain conscious and remain, in control of the situation. And then lastly are the psychic senses and intuitions that people naturally have. So, and these include your clairs and all that fun stuff, right? So when you actually lay these out, it seems like it's different levels of mediumship, but it's not the case. It's just simply different muscles, different tools that people have to interpret spirit, right? One, the mounting and the mediation type of tools require the medium to be very comfortable in surrendering their ego, surrendering their spirit, and putting their spirit aside in order to allow external spirit to move through them. Whereas with the psychic senses and using your clairs, there's no real I'm not going to say there's no real danger, but there's no real sacrifice in terms of your personal ego, your personal spirit, etc., etc., which is why when you are learning about your psychic senses and you are trying to develop your psychic senses, this is why many of us need to teach you discernment and need to teach you how to differentiate between what you are projecting onto what you're perceiving versus what you're actually perceiving, right? So when it comes to the psychic senses, the psychic intuitive senses, everyone has these abilities. They may not have all 8 of them developed, but they can get them developed within this lifetime, and that's totally fine. The trance mediator and the mounting type of medium are muscles within the body and spiritual exercises within the body that not everyone can develop, and even if they are trying to develop it, not everyone will develop it within this lifetime, okay? Because it does require you to be a wide open vessel. It requires you to put yourself aside, and 99.9% of people don't want to do that. Because it's scary, it's uncomfortable. Let's be real. Let's talk about it. Let's be real. Like when you are mounting spirit, it is not comfortable. It is not, especially if you do it for the very first time, it is very uncomfortable. It's very scary. You are essentially displacing your spirit. It's like you're taking your spirit and putting it in like, another room, like in a closet somewhere, while this other entity is animating your body. And that is very difficult for people to relinquish that control, which is why being a mount and even being a mediator, where you're kind of in between, where you are still in control but you still have to surrender, these 2 types of mediums, you don't find them very often. They're not a dime a dozen, and this is why when you go to misas and spiritual circles, they require a certain amount of mediums who can mount and who can channel in that space. They require that because, you know, while everyone else is utilizing their psychic senses, those psychic senses can still be tainted by our own ego, by our own thoughts, by our own projections. Those psychic senses are still being developed, etc., etc. There are ways in which that can go wrong. And I'm not saying that mounting and trans mediumship I'm not saying that nothing can't go wrong with that. That's a whole nother level of conversation that is not for this video, but what I'm saying is that to be that, or at least to train into being that, requires a very strong set of disciplines and a very strong set of skills, right? Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of natural born mediums that just are born into this world with their stuff wide open and getting mounted by spirit quite often since they were very small. And so that's not to say that they don't exist, but that's what my previous video, not the previous one, but the one before it, that's why it was so important to discuss being able to, you know, temper that and being able to keep that under control. Because although it is a beautiful thing to be a mount, it's a beautiful thing to be a transmediator, it is not a safe thing to be that all the time. There are set circumstances, such as misas, such as certain rituals in which you can step into that self, but to be like that all the time is not safe, right? Anyway, so these are a few things I wanted to discuss because they were questions that came up. Also, I was in a live last night that they were talking about, you know, the mediums, and I was just like so fascinated about their take on it. I was fascinated by some of the experiences that I was reading with the comments that I was getting, and I felt like it was necessary to at least distinguish between, at minimum, those three types of mediums, right? Because again, we have all different types of mediums. We also have mediums that can channel. I mean, they fall under the category of mediator / trans medium, where, you know, they allow the spirit to work through them and they do automatic writing, or they allow the spirit to work through them and they do a divination, or they use a spirit box, or they, you know what I mean? Like there's different ways to perceive spirit, that still require you to be kind of on the fringe of kind of, you know, removing your spirit self, but not in complete totality in the way that a mount is utilized. Yeah, I think that's it. If you have any other questions, let me know. I hope you found this information helpful. Again, my name is Leilani. This is The Magical Solution, and this is how we grow. Thanks for watching.